right. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm here live with Jill Kaufman. She is a divorce coach. And I'm really excited about this conversation because I feel like, divorce is obviously very common, but I personally don't ever hear much about the process, or all I know is very difficult and can be a very lonely, scary road for people to have to go through. As I've watched several, friends of mine go through it and all of that. So Jill, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tanya, for having me.
Yeah. So if anyone here is watching the live or watching the replay, please post a comment, let us know, ask your questions. So Jill, before we get into exactly what it is how you work with clients, can you share with us your own personal journey of what led you to want to do this kind of work?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a therapist, and I became a therapist because I knew that I needed a career because my own marriage was not doing great. And so I started graduate school when I had 3 young kids, and um, I was working as a therapist for several years. Then I went through my own divorce in 2012, and it was horrible. In 2012, there weren't a lot of divorce coaches. There wasn't a lot of information there. I hired an attorney and thought that I just had to listen to what my attorney said. And so it became very high conflict. We could have gone to court. We almost ended up going to court, but I realized that I knew my ex better than anybody else, and I knew what he wanted, and I knew what was important to me, and I created a proposal. I went to him without attorneys, and I said, I'm going to agree to everything that is on the table that you want, except for, and it was just the schedule, the children's schedule. He wanted a week on, week off, and I wanted 2-2-5. And he said, okay, deal. And we told our attorneys, and we got it written up, and we got divorced. And then I went into my own private practice, and I started working with people going through divorce. And then I realized I could coach, because I could only work with people in New Jersey, and I could coach people all over if I did coaching. So I still have a private practice. I became trained as a mediator, divorce mediator, and I help people. I developed a program. I wrote a book. I have an online course, and I developed a program where I help people with the process so that they don't make the same mistakes that I made, and they don't get their divorce into high conflict when they don't need to. Even if they have a high conflict soon to be ex, I can help them keep it lower the conflict. So it's really about protecting kids and families and supporting people as they go through this journey. And that's how I got here. So,
Yeah. I'm curious, what are the most, well, I have lots of questions, I guess. First one, what are some of the biggest mistakes that, and I'm guessing you coach both men and women, or
I do.
mostly? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are the most common mistakes an individual makes when it comes to divorce? Are there pitfalls or mistakes or, yeah, common traps that they find themselves in that had they known better, they could have done differently?
Yeah. Well, the big mistake is the one I made, is hiring an attorney first thing and letting your attorney control your divorce. Um, I recommend you work with a divorce coach to help you manage the whole process, so you're managing the process rather than an attorney. And the reason is because attorneys are experts in the law, but they're not experts in finance. They're not experts in mental health. They're not experts in parenting. So a lot of times people will ask their attorneys, their attorneys are like, give me all your financial information. It's not really going to be helpful for the attorney to go through all that information, because you really need a financial professional. Um,
Mm.
I was in finance right out of college for 7 years, so I have a financial background. I was a certified parent educator, so I have a parenting background. Um, so, like, you really have to know which professional to use, and a lot of people don't. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. The other mistake is that divorce is 80% emotional, like it's
Right.
financial, legal, and other things, but it's so emotional. And when you're making decisions without getting control of your emotions, you're not going to make good decisions. So that's what I help people with. That's what divorce coaches help people with. Therapists help people with that. So, get a professional who can help you manage your emotions so you can think clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, get out of the being in a reactionary stance. Yeah, makes
Right.
sense. Right. Totally. Wow. So, and so, like, so what are some of the way when someone is I'm just curious, like, what kind of processes do you use when someone is dealing with an ex, like you said, is very contentious, like, I mean, I've just seen it so many women where the ex just to me appears like they're just out of their mind, or they wanna take the children away completely and all the things, they're just over the top, they wanna really, they hire a nasty lawyer and it gets to be overwhelming, whereas, on the other end of the stick, you're just like, "Holy shit, like, how do I do this?" This guy's coming at me from all directions. How do I because I think as women, we tend to it's a lot for us. We have generations and generations of patterning from, from being a woman of just letting him have it or, not standing up for ourselves, being the people pleasers, like, "Okay, let's just try to make this easy and not really stand up for ourselves." Yeah, how do you I don't know.
So, yeah, it depends on the situation. Like every situation's different, but if
Yeah,
somebody is struggling with setting boundaries and is getting threats from the other party, and I've had both situations. I've had men in that situation as well as women.
sure, yeah,
Um, and so you're going to react to those threats. You're going to be scared. You're going to be fearful. You're going to call your attorney and say, "You got to protect me." They're telling me they're not giving me the children, or not giving me the house, or not. I'm never going to get a penny from them. And one of the things that people need to understand is that they can say whatever they want. They can threaten all these things, but there are laws, right? So there are laws there to protect you. And if somebody says you're not going to get a penny, it's probably not true, right?
huh?
And so giving them the facts and getting them to a point where they see what's true and what's not true is really important. So education is so
Mm,
important. Education about the process, education about the laws. Um, there are different laws in different states and in different countries, but in general, there's a lot of similarities to the laws. So, you know, you can't take away parenting time from someone if they haven't abused the children or have an addiction problem or have some other kind of major thing. Like a lot of my clients say, he saw me, discipline my child. Is he going to take away my parenting rights? And I'm like, no, you cannot take away parenting rights just because you're disciplining your child. You know what I mean? Although there are people who make false accusations
yeah,
and then Child Protective Services has to come out, but they're not going to, there's not going to open a case. So there are people who go to those extremes where they lie about allegations and you have to deal with that, which
yeah,
is very stressful, and you worry that you're going to lose your children. But in most cases, they can't prove anything if there wasn't anything done. So it's about education. It's about um, building back the person's confidence, because if you've been married to someone who's been controlling and threatening and possibly abusive, your self-esteem has taken a hit. And So when you're divorcing this person, they get even more controlling and threatening, and that's super scary,
Yeah,
and people are very scared of that. And so we need to um, recognize strengths in people, and we have to look at the past and how much you've dealt with, because everybody I work with is so strong, and all they have to do is look at what they've dealt with to see how strong they are. And, like, I had a client who was in the same house, going through divorce, and she was the one earning all the money, and he was not working for years. And she was so scared that he was going to, take all her money and take the kids and all this other stuff. And I was like, wait a second, you've been supporting the family for through like an abusive situation for many years. You're pretty strong there, like she didn't even realize how
right.
strong, because you get so in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And so recognizing your strengths and building back your confidence will help you through this process. And people really do. Every day you go through it, you should pat yourself on the back, because it's such a difficult and stressful process.
Yeah. Oh, man, I can imagine, just how I mean, I imagine just how you're able to sort of, like, calm somebody down, just, like, take a deep breath, "You got this. Let's just take this step by step." It's really just a process, step by step, and I imagine that it's something that, trusting the process, it's not like somebody comes to you, "Okay, we gotta figure all this out right now." It's this it's this process step by step, and I imagine, like, each step of the way that things come up, like, "Okay, I took this step, and then this showed up," or, "My ex then did this, so how do I respond?" And um so you create a really strong container for them to come to you with like, "Okay, now what do I do?" "Here's what showed up."
Yeah. And part of what is unique about my approach is I really encourage people to join my program, which is a group of people going through it. And it's amazing the healing that can be done when you're connected. And most of the people are
Mhm.
women. Um, but when you're connected to other people who are going through the same thing, and you hear what they're going through, and you're like, I'm not the only person dealing with this craziness,
Right.
like I'm not isolated. And like last week we had a session where there was 5 women on the call, and they said, how are we all married to the same person? Like
Uh-huh.
they're all like relating to each other, having very different circumstances, but there are things that you can relate to as
Yeah,
you go through this that nobody else can relate to, because they've never been through this. And it just makes you feel like, oh, I'm not the only person dealing with this. And if they can deal with it, I can deal with it.
yeah,
It's really an amazing part of my work with people. I mean, I love working with people one on one, but there's just something really special in the group.
dang. And so, with the group, like, what does that look like? Do you is are there, like, maybe, I don't know, lessons that you kinda go through each week, or is it just kinda like is it organic? Like, how does it what's
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's question and answer. So like they'll come with questions, and I answer, but then there's always a theme, that everybody's kind of like one person really needs the group more than others certain weeks. And then, we'll focus on what that person needs, and then everybody kind of helps. And that's really healing too, to help other people through it. And when your advice can really help someone,
Yeah,
that's really empowering for people. So, there's a dynamic there of people who've been working with me for a while, or just joining, and it's a really wonderful supportive community that we all need. I
yeah,
wish I had it. I mean, that's why I do it, because I wish I had that when I was going through this. Most of my friends were married and could
yeah,
not understand at
right.
all.
Right, right, totally, 100%. And so I'm curious, do you ever get people who are, um, we're talking about the ex that's like over the top, wants to, like, have all the control. Do you get people like that in your practice, or just like, "I want this, now I'm just gonna slaughter the other person, I'm gonna," how
Mostly.
mostly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, most people who, who have relatively amicable divorces don't need my services. So there are
Yeah,
people who are, struggling and, really need support.
yeah, and, you said earlier, like, it's really about the what can we do in the best interest if there's children involved, you know, act in the best interest of the children, so, um 'cause, what I feel like I see is what people lose sight of the children, and they're so focused on hurting their ex or getting back at them and the revenge, and they don't even stop to realize, like, you have 2 children that are looking on and seeing all of this, and it's so damaging, right? So
Yeah.
damaging, it's so much trauma. How do you address that?
So I only work with people who have children because parenting and co-parenting is my thing. I just, that's my passion is working with parents and helping children. Um, so that's what I think people don't realize is that if your spouse is being high conflict, if you respond in a high conflict way, the person you're hurting is not your spouse, it's your children. And yourself. I mean, you're hurting yourself to be in a high conflict divorce.
Yeah,
So there's methods to respond to people who are high conflict that lower the conflict. And so, but it doesn't mean you have to give up everything. You can still set boundaries. You can still stick up for what you want, but you don't have to try to fight everything. So you choose your battles because you
mhm,
have a high conflict person and you ignore a lot of the triggers, like if they're saying something threatening or manipulative or unfair, it's not fair. The problem is, and I was in the situation, it's not fair for you to always have to do the right thing, right?
mhm,
um, when they're not doing the right thing. And it's not fair that, you're 90% of the time you're doing the right thing, but that 10% you really want to do the wrong thing because you want to yell or you want to, it's not,
yeah,
it's, you keep saying it's not fair, but it's not fair will be the end of your divorce negotiations. You can't negotiate wanting it to be fair. It isn't fair. And the
mm,
only thing that should be in your mind as much as possible is your children. And if you can keep them front of your mind and thinking about them, you won't worry that much if it's fair. You'll realize that in the end your kids are going to benefit by you taking the higher road,
yeah,
and your kids will benefit if you're done with your divorce quicker and
mm,
even if you have to give up a little bit that
yeah.
you don't want to.
And I imagine that once going through a divorce, okay, so there's the build up to the process, and then there's the final, okay, now you're divorced. Then there's this whole other new chapter that that person has to acclimate to or adjust and deal with. Do you also address the kinda like the post-divorce era at all, or you just kinda get them through, "Okay, now you're done, you're good. If you need
Yeah.
extra work, you can go over here," or
Yeah,
whatever?
I have plenty of people to refer people to. I'm also sponsoring a post-divorce support group right now with a woman that, I've worked with before, and she's amazing.
Mhm.
But I don't work with people post-divorce. I really focus on trying to get people before they make a ton of mistakes. So
Yeah,
when they're thinking about or just starting the divorce, but even in the middle of the divorce, we can right the ship. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like if it's going off, we can get it to be at a better place. But once they're divorced, um, they need to work with somebody else.
yeah,
And I have plenty of people I can refer them to. But, there's just something about helping people through this process that really speaks to me.
yeah,
That's where I focus my
yeah.
work.
Well, it's such a tornado, you know? It's a tornado. I mean, it's kind of like getting a cancer diagnosis or something. Like, okay, here we go. Like, this is a
Yeah,
whole nother ball game. And yeah, to have the support, wow. Yeah, I can
yeah,
see the deep, deep, deep value in that. And really how you kind of help people minimize the wreckage, let's say,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
No, and it's funny because as a therapist, I work with people. I do marriage counseling, and I do co-parenting counseling, and so I'm working with two, both parties, and um, that part is so it's very stressful because you're trying to avoid a divorce in marriage counseling and co-parenting counseling. Usually the two parties don't like each other. And they're trying to work together, but I've had so many very interesting situations. But I keep that to a minimum because my most of my work is with people going to divorce through divorce.
mhm,
And and it's easier for me. Like, people are like, "How do you do that? That's such tough work." And I'm like, "It's actually easier for me because it's one person that I'm dealing with." You know what I mean? I'm not dealing with the two parties, and
yeah,
I'm really helping them. Like, there's specific help that I'm giving them on a day-to-day basis that they need.
yeah,
Whereas, like, post-divorce, it's like it could take years for people to get through all the healing that you need to.
right,
It doesn't mean you're not in a better place and happier, but that's long-term
right. It's
hard
like,
work.
how did you got now you gotta look at how did you end up in that situation and how did it get so bad? And,
Right,
there's, you know, facing all of that that's within,
right,
yeah, makes a lot of sense.
right.
Beautiful.
We try to do that while people are going through divorce, kinda
Yeah,
look at, how did we get here, and do some of the healing
yeah,
in my while they're going through divorce. But yeah, then once the divorce is over, there that crisis is over.
yeah.
So
It's
it's more,
yeah,
yeah,
makes
focused
sense.
on.
So before we hop off, um, is there anything else you'd like the audience to know? And I'm also curious about like, yeah, what is your group program? What do you offer?
Sure. So, I guess I want people to know that there's help out there. Like, don't try to do this alone. Don't try to do it with just an attorney,
Yeah,
um, or just your friends and family, because, their friends and family are great, but they don't know the process. They don't know how to avoid mistakes. They don't know how to deal with a high conflict soon to be ex. So, you know, get someone who has experience and can help you and guide you through this process, um, other than your attorney. And in terms of my programs, so I have a free Facebook group. It's called Separation and Divorce Support Community. There's over 6,500 people in it, and it's a really supportive, free community for people. So that's something I'd love people to join, because it if you can't afford my services, it's a great way to get support. And even if you can get support through that. um, I have a book, I have an online course, and I have this coaching program where there's individual coaching for me and the group piece of it. And you get access to all of my online course. And I do workshops every other week with divorce professionals, and I have all the recordings in there. And there's just so much to know. Like, I'm doing one with a forensic accountant in a week and a half, and they can help you find hidden assets. So people are like, well, what if they're hiding assets? I can't do anything about that. There are things you can do. If you need to buy a house and you don't have income, how can you do that? I have a certified divorce lending professional that I have done a workshop with. Like, there's all these things that people get out of connecting with someone like me
mhm.
that would be so helpful in getting the word out about that. Because I know people who spent $100,000 on attorneys
Yeah,
and
oh
have
my
not
goodness.
gotten anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen it, and it goes on for it can go on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Never end.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely needed work, and, I yeah, people can really eliminate a lot of the pain and suffering and the prolongation of something that can be dealt with, um, much more efficiently, so, yeah, this is great, and, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I think this is a really powerful message for people to understand. Totally get it. I mean, attorneys, they can only do so much. And really, I mean, no offense to attorneys, but they're out to make the money, you know?
Yeah,
They're gonna make as much money as they possibly can, and the larger the settlement, the better for them, you know?
yeah,
So, yeah, so knowing just yeah, I love that you empower people to stay in the driver's seat and know that they can be empowered to make choices and make decisions that are good for themselves and their children
right,
ultimately.
right.
So, yeah, yeah.
And, my website is divorcecoachjill.com,
Mhm.
and, people can email me at info@divorcecoachjill.com, and I have a ton of free resources as well as my paid resources.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. So please drop your questions here for Jill if you have any. Definitely check her out on Facebook, check out her Facebook group. Um, yeah, ton of resources here available if you're in a situation that is going towards divorce and yeah, know what you need to know to be prepared. And thank you, Jill, so much for spending your time with me and for connecting with the audience. And yeah, well, have a great, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, same to you.
All right. Bye, everyone.